Okay, so I get the opportunity to talk about the vision for next year, and that's always fun. I promised Ken I would keep it short, and that was a lie. It's going to be a little bit longer. I felt like this is a great opportunity. I don't get to talk about my faith as often, but I would love to. Robert, I need that. I would love to. Thank you. I'd love to actually share, because I think it's really relevant now. I'd like to share my favorite Bible verse, and it doesn't make sense unless I give you the context. So the context is the David and Goliath story. I got an eye roll or two because we all know the story. It's an underdog story, and David versus Goliath. I know that, but hopefully, and I think this will happen, when I share the verse with you, I think it'll shed some new light on that verse. Okay, so first, 30,000-foot caveman summary. Goliath really big, David not. Okay, Goliath 9 feet tall, David not. Goliath probably 300 pounds, David not. Goliath, a trained soldier. David, a harp-playing poet writer that is a shepherd boy. Goliath, a 15-pound spear. David, a 4-ounce river rock. And then last comparison is Goliath, a big sword, and David, a leather sling. Probably leather. I'm assuming it's leather. Rick, what do you think? Leather. It's probably leather. Now, that's the 30,000-foot view. And before I get struck by lightning, I need to make something very clear. This is a God story. I'm not sidestepping that. David was chosen by God. He was blessed by God. There's God's providence, omniscience, omnipotence, all the big words, okay? And I don't think we talk enough about David in this story and what he had to do to be ready, okay? So David, we know, was a shepherd boy, okay? And in the Bible, it actually says that he would spend day and night looking over the sheep. For those of you that don't know, sheep are the stupidest animals in the world. They are really dumb. They will walk right to a ravine and fall in. They'll walk right to predators. So David was working all the time with no celebration, no audience. He was staying ready at all times, okay? We actually know in the Bible that it says that a sling thrower, that's what we're going to call them. I don't know what they're called, sling throwers. Sling throwers actually could take a hair off of somebody's head. And if you think that's an exaggeration, give a baseball player a baseball, and they will throw a 95-mile-an-hour fastball and take a bottle cap off of something. So it is possible. We also know nowadays from historians and record keepers that sling throwers were actually lethally accurate. They were able to launch that projectile, and they said that it's pretty close to having a small handgun in a sword fight. Now, they were not very efficient. So if you ever saw a sling thrower in the battlefield, they would have to do this whole twirling dance, and then they would launch this thing. And we know that the stone actually sank into Goliath's forehead, which, for those of you, that's a really nice way of saying the stone went through his skull. Okay, just so a Christmas vision. There you go. Okay, I hope you guys enjoy that visual. Now, something else that I want to point out is a lot of people think that David woke up that morning and he was ready to fight a giant. That is not true. David was actually sent to the battle lines to deliver food to his brothers that were the soldiers. Okay? David was overlooked in every way. There was even a story where his father Jesse lined up all of his sons to see who was going to be crowned the next king. He didn't even call David in from the fields. David stayed out there. Okay? The shepherd boy was kind of like your 9-year-old taking out trash. It's like, yeah, just do something to keep you busy. You're probably not going to do a good job, but just stay busy. Okay? So that's the story of David and Goliath. And yet there's a verse in the story that since I was in junior high has just haunted me. And it's right in the middle of the story. The crazy thing is you've all read this verse. It maybe just didn't speak to you, and hopefully it will now. So the verse is 1 Samuel 17:48. Every Bible that I've ever had, I think since junior high, 12 Bibles, I don't know, highlighted, underlined, circled, starred. 1 Samuel 17:48. As Goliath moved forward to the battle line, David rushed out to meet him. Goosebumps. So and I've looked at it. I've looked into it. Every single translation says rushed or ran. I even looked into the Hebrew and the Greek. Every single says rushed or ran. And when you look at the Bible from a literary standpoint, why did the author say that? Like, why couldn't the author just say that they met, right? David and Goliath met at the battle line, or David met Goliath. No, it says rushed or ran, made haste. Okay? Now, I used to explain that away because I loved that verse. And it's not one you'll see on a mug or like a pillow. It's just a verse that I've always loved. And I used to explain it away. I used to say, well, David was just a hard-nosed guy. He was a gamer. I even stole from John Wooden. I said he had competitive greatness. But it didn't work. It didn't satisfy what I wanted it to mean. And it wasn't until a few years ago, actually, I read a book. This was maybe 3 years ago, by an author, researcher, psychologist. Her name is Angela Duckworth. And she wrote a book called Grit. It is a fantastic book. I recommend everybody read it. But she coined this term, and she basically said grit is where intense passion and a persistence, a refusal to quit meet. That's what grit is. Because we live in a culture now where you can be really passionate about something on Monday, and on Thursday, something new pops up. Okay? Or you can be really persistent with something you hate, and I think that's just miserable. I don't even know what that is. But grit is the ability to stay ready even when things get tough, even when there's no audience, even when there's no applause. Okay? Applause. So how does grit work with us? Well, I'm glad you asked, Noel. Thank you. So the way grit applies to us as agents is, I would go as far to say that if you were raising a son and a daughter, that's me, and I wanted them to be as grittiest as possible. I wanted them to be tough. I wanted them to have integrity. I wanted them to be passionate. I wanted them to have grit. Would I give them the easiest life or the hardest life? I mean, not the hardest, but would I keep them from every challenge? The answer is no, you would not do that. I would argue that grit only grows in those low points. I would argue that grit is only forged when you face challenges. And I've had some conversations recently, which is crazy, with one person that they just made it through a really tough 4 years. They made it through a really tough time. And in my head, all I just kept thinking was, good. Like, you got so much more grit because of that. And I would say that grit is only formed when, you miss out on a listing. You get a flat tire and everything goes wrong. You have an opportunity to grow grit. So in closing, what I want to do is probably going to be the first blessing of its kind. If you've ever listened to Brian Buffini's podcast, there you go. We got a Buffco person there. He ends every podcast with a blessing from his mother, Therese Buffini. Okay? And it's an Irish blessing. And if you don't know how blessings work, it's kind of like, may this happen to you and then that. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be at your back. Okay? What my blessing would be for us and for next year is may you see those opportunities of grit. May you see those challenges and think, good. This is an opportunity for me to grow. This is I need this. Okay? I would argue that if everything went your way, you wouldn't develop much grit at all. Okay? So my blessing to us is, may you see those opportunities and may you rush out to meet them. Don't just lean into these things. I want you to rush out to face those giants, okay? So this is going to be the first weirdest toast of its kind. I want everyone to raise their glass, and may we all rush out to meet those challenges, and may we grow our grit. Cheers. Cheers.